My name is Maria Lifshitz Murphy. I was born October 1st, 1938, in Warsaw, Poland. Soon after my birth, in September of next year, 1939, the German attacked Poland, and suddenly my family became enemy of the state, and we end up being in the ghetto. Luckily for us, we were living there already before. That was part of Warsaw that the German decided to make a Jewish place and surrounding by a wall and wire. So there were a difficult life. But when I was about 3 years old, maybe 3.5, thanks to my family, I was smuggled out of ghetto by train, that I remember more or less, to Polish family in the farm. The way I remember, it was in the neighborhood of the city Ostrołęka, somewhere in the farm, and the name of the family was Marcinkowski. My aunt Paula, sister of my father, was keeping in touch with them and sending money and packages, but somehow I was not encouraged to find them, and when there was opportunity, when I was still living in Poland, it just never happened. Just almost immediately after the war, my mother found me and took me from the farm, and then soon later on she met a man, and the fruit of that relationship were my twin sisters, Sofia and Irka, Zosia, Irka. I took care of them because I was like 8 years old and my mother had to go to work. The Warsaw was all burned out. There was no place for us to be. So we started living in the town of Bielawa, near Dzierżoniów. That was on Zochol, land that was captured from Germany, from the German. The German was thrown away from their homes. So we received a house, totally furnished, very nice house, on the street called Słoneczna, that means Sunny Street, number 5. There were dolls, and there were a lot of albums with stamps, and anyhow, I had things to play. But my playing time, like I said, didn't last too long, since I had the living dolls pretty soon. I had to take care of my 2 little sisters, change the diapers and feed them. Pretty tough life. There was an incident when I went to a Polish school. Some little boy called me Jew. I didn't know what it meant. He said to me, "You Jew and you killed Jesus." That was my experience with the Catholic Polish people. I didn't go there often. I didn't go there again, I don't believe. And then my mother put me in a Hebrew school. Apparently there were a bunch of other Jewish people on the way to Israel, and they had a Hebrew school. And I started learning alphabet. I don't know exactly how long I went there, not very long. I didn't have shoes, so I had to go barefoot, and my warm clothes was my mother's jacket that she kind of cut down so I could walk in them. Now we are on the way to Israel. We are on a train. We're stopping in Marseille, and I have to learn very quickly French language. There was another scary detail that I remember from this time. My mother needs something to be organized or brought or something, and she's giving me detailed instruction how to do it. Now think, I could have been 9 years old, but I don't know exactly. She putting me on a bus, and I'm not too sure that I will ever find my way home, because I don't know where I was. I remember being very scared. Somehow or another, I did find my way back. It almost remind me of the story of Hansel and Gretel, left it in the woods. Mother sent me one time to buy some medication, and all the way I'm trying to remember the name. She didn't give me a piece of paper. And when I went to the pharmacy, I don't remember what she wanted. But I think he asked me what's the problem, and I probably told him that she doesn't feel well, she has a fever, and he probably sold me something. I probably didn't lose the money yet. I went, my mother sent me to the office. I was still 7. I didn't have my sister yet. We're living in Bielava. So I went to that office. And there's the man sitting there and doing business. I believe she asked me to bring her cards, because after the war we had to have a card to buy food or some kind of help. I don't know exactly what. So when I was in that office, I was telling the man why I'm there and what I'm supposed to be doing, kind of. And he couldn't believe it, that a little girl like that came by herself to the office to ask for help. That man turned out to be Mr. Weinberg. He and his wife become our lifelong friends. So Mr. and Mrs. Weinberg, Ruzha and Henry Weinberg, very important people in our life. This is how I make acquaintance of the 7-year-old girl coming to do the big business. What had happened, he didn't give me the paper that I asked or whatever, but he came at night to the house and meet my mother and brought the paper or whatever we needed. Then we are already on a train to Israel, so we're stopping in France, and in Marseille we took a boat to Israel. I was very excited. I think I kissed the ground, just like the Pope does. My cousin Arik, with his mother, Ruzha Reichman, came over and gave me a package of chewing gum. I was so crazy about that chewing gum. I took it all to pieces and put them in my mouth right away. And then when I found the first orange, I ate it with skin and everything. Yeah, that was the time of kibbutz, living in the kibbutz. In the very beginning days, we were living in a tent for people, new immigrant. My aunt came very quickly and found us a little place in a kibbutz. And I had to start to learn. And my aunt was pretty like a severe teacher. I had to do homework, and kids were kind of nasty sometimes. They were turning off the lights, and I couldn't study very well. Well, I wasn't very happy. I didn't feel like studying too much. I had to memorize the Bible, Bereshonit, Elohim, Kraet, Eretz, V'Harayav, Bereshonit. That's the beginning of the Bible, the best as I can remember it now. Anyhow, I was playing on the street with the kids. It was like a rural community. I work a little bit. I was helping with the little cow. I was helping on a land we were planting daffodil flowers. They were selling flowers and having big milk production. I was 9, and I could speak Hebrew, just like every other kid. I'm in Israel now, and the year is 1948, and in May of that year, the Jewish people had their state. The Israel is born exactly in May 14, 1948, and I'm in Israel, and I'm dancing hora with all the other kids and grown up, and we are having big celebration. I was kind of happy, I think as happy as you can be, and I had to take care of my sister still, because my mother decided that she doesn't want to work in the kibbutz. She went outside the kibbutz and found a job, and she was working in Tel Aviv and not coming. Maybe she was coming every night, I don't remember, but in the afternoon there was time that the parents should have taken care of their children, and I become suddenly a parent of those twins. 48 May, I'm 9 years old. So that kind of cut on my free time to play, but it was okay. I was very poor. I didn't have any toys. I remember a little girl invited me to her house, and she had a coloring books. So I, with all the passion, started coloring, and her mother was upset She said, that's coloring for her, not for you. Like expensive coloring books. I got a gift. It must be some kind of holidays, and the little gift was coloring. Oh yeah, it was a little hammer. And there was other kid who liked it, and he had a coloring pencil, and I exchanged with him. And he said, what stupid, my cousin was not happy. He said, I want that hammer, exchange with the coloring. I didn't know the value of anything. I had a beautiful true coral that my aunt apparently gave it to me. I don't remember how. And I exchanged that too for some stupid plastic beads, stupid thing. And then I lost a little nice golden ring that my aunt gave it to me. Well, I lose stuff. Yeah, those coral, they were rough on my skin, so I didn't want to wear it. And my mother should have taken it away from me and hide it and put it, to save it for the future. But anyhow, nobody thought about it. So I lost my little jewelry inheritance. I'm still in Israel, and my mother is working outside. My mother was very good artist, and she was able to make a cover for baby cribs and baby carriages. Her husband was manufacturer of baby carriages. And my mother not only worked and made money herself, but she had like small manufacturer. She had like a few girls working for her, 3 or 4, I don't remember how. We're talking right now, Poland in between the wartime. We're talking like 30s. And she was doing the same thing in Israel. She started making money that way. But she was not happy. I don't think she liked the heat. She didn't like the people somehow. She was not very Jewish in her mind. She was telling me how nice were Arab who gave her some water, but Jewish people didn't want to give her water when she was in Jerusalem. And she didn't like the people in the kibbutz. She was telling me all the time, like she would wash the floor and they walk there. I mean, that was the bathroom, She said she's more than a, washwoman, and that's why he left the kibbutz. Though there were problems, and then she said finally she was able to arrange passage back to Poland. At that time, I consider my mother to be a hero woman that wouldn't take no for an answer. Because how she was able to go back to Poland with all 3 of us, wow. My aunt told me, you don't have to go, but how could I not go? Mother is more important than my aunt. Plus, I thought she needed me with taking care of the kids, my sisters. So we're on the way back. Plus, I like to travel. Any chance to travel, I will travel. So we went back on the boat. I don't remember very well, but I know that we end up in Naples. I remember that. And then we staying in a hotel, eating spaghetti, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then one day I must have had a little bit money because I went down and I bought myself a peach that was as large as my head, I think. I remember that peach so well. And my mother bought me a nice little blouse that was blue with anchor on both sides. And that plus, the children really liked it when I was wearing it later on in Poland. And I also had another beautiful blouse from Israel, was white, with big embroidery all around the neck. I used to do embroidery when I was in Israel. I learned how to do it, and I really like it. It was something fun to do. I learned how to play a penny whistle, they call it, or another way. My cousin Arik was upset with me because I play all the book right away. He said, you're not supposed to go all the way down. You're supposed to learn this, and I already learned everything. So I don't know, maybe he was jealous. And I went back to Poland, and we didn't have a house. I went to one orphanage, and my mother sent the children went to another orphanage, and mother was in Warsaw. I was close to Warsaw in a place named Otwock. I tried to find this place again when I came and visit in 2000, but somehow I didn't find it, but that's okay. I was there only like a year. Mother brought me extra food. She shouldn't have. I have. Once I start eating, I can't stop eating, you know. It was always a problem. Eventually, she got an apartment in one of the very first buildings they built in the city of Warsaw, in the community called Muranów. That block was number 12, means that was the very first that they built. We got a very nice apartment on the 3rd floor. Can't remember the number. Yeah, 50. That was Nowolipie 25, Nowolipie 25, apartment 50. I remember the address. Irka, my sister, right away found a very good girlfriend who had an apartment in the bottom floor, and she was very well off. Her father was like a supervisor or CEO of the big company somewhere. So they have television, and she started being in their house more than she was in the other house. But Irka and Zofia, despite being twins, they didn't like each other, so they were fighting already then. And Sofia was like a bully, so apparently she was beating up Irka, and that's what she's telling me about it. But on the other hand, mother didn't treat them even-handedly, because Irka was skinny and Sofia she was not fat, but she was, had some muscle. So mother always tried to get the best food for Irka, and that wasn't very nice. She was hiding pastry for Irka. Anyhow, they started. I had a big problem still with the sister of mine, because mother had to constantly work and I had to be constantly babysitting. And then when I started going to school, they went to their kindergarten. So I had to take care of them. I took them to their kindergarten. Sometimes I just tell them to go, get out of it. Thank goodness nothing happened. Mother wanted me to study Latin, but I really prefer French. So there was some kind of problem there. Eventually, instead of going to this plain high school, mother believed I need a profession as quickly as I could. So she decided I had to do exam. It was a little bit difficult to be accepted. Again, with mother push and help, I was accepted to the dental school. Besides being like in regular high school, I learned how to make artificial teeth. So jumping to United States, when I was looking for a job, they immediately got me to work. I got a job right away. Once you have a professional that you know how to do it with your hand, no matter where you are in the whole wide world, you can do it. With medicine, it's more difficult because you need a license. Even if you know what you're doing, it is illegal to be a professional and person unless you have a license. But we think like learning something with the tools, like learning how to make artificial teeth, that was, immediately you can get a job no matter where you are. People need teeth wherever they are. But when I was 18 years old, and I was already in dental school, I must have to be 19, I realized that I have a problem with my hands. That was the beginning of the so-called Buerger disease. My hand, when they were exposed to cold, the blood vessel will constrict, and the finger become numb, white and numb and painful. And I couldn't hold any instrument in my hand. So I switched to the regular medicine. Thank goodness, because I didn't really like to be a dentist. I didn't like to do any of those things. So, but then I was there for many years. But before I graduate, my mother was trying to immigrate to the United States, and she believed that if I graduate, they will hold me for many years. They won't let me go, because after all, this is a communist government. They pay for my education. I don't pay anything. Besides, they give me a little scholarship every month and free food. Otherwise, I couldn't study. Mother didn't make any money, really. She was teaching Russian. She was making like pittance. So when our paper came, I was like on the last year of medical school. My mother said, "You're so bright, you can finish in America." And I left. But I want to tell you how we were surviving. My aunt, sister of my father, Paula, meantime emigrated to Australia, she and also her two other sisters. She was living with one of her sisters, and she was helping me by sending me packages of stuff. My mother would sell it, but that's okay. And there was only one time I was upset because she sent me a very nice coat, overcoat, and she sold it, and I didn't have a nice overcoat. I didn't like that. But whatever was in the closet, she would bring people to the house and selling them stuff from the closet. I knew the languages were important. In my house, I had many books. The books were Russian, but they were foreign language books, and Mother brought me a lot of them. And in my mind, I was saying, well, I try to read one language a day, so I will keep up with all those languages. But all the time I said, why do we need to know all those languages? When you're traveling around Europe, you have to change language all the time. Why should we? Why couldn't we have one language that all people can understand each other? Second language. Well, Ludwig Zamenhof taught the same, and by the time he was 17 years old, he had the language. I found Esperanto when I was 16. It was, in Warsaw, it was advertised on street card. I found a place where they were teaching. I learned quickly, and I became very active in Esperanto movement since 1956 until these days. I want to bring this up because I was able, after even there was an iron curtain, so to speak, since 1959, 1960, I was able to travel across the border to Western Europe as my Esperanto friends were finding me summer jobs. And I was attending congresses. So when I came to United States in December of 1963, I already had my Esperanto friends waiting for me in the harbor in New York. And it was absolutely beautiful night with all the lights of Christmas, and we went to Rockefeller Center, and the snow was just lightly falling down. And then when we came to Boston, I had another group of friends, Esperanto friends, waiting for me as well. So even I couldn't speak English, I had friends around me, and my Esperanto friends from Boston, Humphrey Tonking, whom I knew since the 50s from Poland. He was a scholar from Oxford and studying in Harvard, became my friend and helped me a little bit with translation as I was kind of walking around. I didn't have much problem finding work. It was in the lab, and I was able to communicate in French with my boss, who was Canadian. Then my other job was doing artificial teeth, because before I became medical doctor, I already had artificial teeth. I studied, I knew how to do it. Well, my medical education was interrupted in my last year, but my mother thought I'm so smart, no big deal for me. Yeah, it was a big deal in a way, and it took me almost 10 years. I graduated in 73 in Rome. On the way to Rome, I spent time in India and in Africa, East Africa. I came to be in India because my Indian friend was sending little baby to India, and they paid my ticket. One way, I somehow managed back. So I was traveling, so to speak, on a shoestring, but I still spent a lot of time and seeing everything was there to see almost. And when I came back to United States, I made some more exams so I could be licensed. And my first year, I started working as an intern in Fall River. That's where Joe, my older boy, was born. And then I was working in Boston. That's where my younger boy, David, was born in 81. So, and of course, I met my husband because of Esperanto. Ralph was very interested in Esperanto and very, very devoted to the movement. So we have basically an Esperanto family. Oh, I was a goose girl. I had to help. And one time dog bite me. I still have a... had to treat myself, so I found some leaves that they were good, and I was putting on my wounds. Like, for example, there was an older girl, and the tutor would come to teach her, and I was standing under the window so I could hear it. I wanted to be taught too. Also having good time, running with children, playing with children all around. I even remember some German soldier coming to us and I think giving us some candies. And Russian soldier coming out and giving us some candy. By the way, the man of the house was killed in the last day of the movement. He had to go out to take care of the cows or something, and some stray bullet back to Warsaw. Well, actually, we were staying in some woods somewhere. There was this big abandoned castle, and somehow we ended up living there. And we were walking, and somehow there was another people, and I said to them, "You can come and live there. There's a lot of rooms." And my mother was so angry with me. She said, "They're coming and kill you. Don't talk like that." And the other day, I was in Warsaw, and she bought me something like a little bagel to eat, and I have a couple of bites, and there was a beggar, and I give it to him the rest of it, and she said to me, "I'm hungry here. This is my last penny," and she gave it to the beggar, who probably have more to eat than we are. Yeah, I was kind of too friendly and too giving since I was a little girl. There were abandoned building and castle all over. You could go and live wherever you want to, but I don't remember how long. Let me tell you, soon after we were in Warsaw, we ended up in Bielawa. That I have much better memory. They gave us a very lovely house. It was like a duplex, kitchen and a dining room downstairs and a bedroom upstairs, full of nice stuff, full of toys, dolls. I told you, albums full of Hitler stamps. And then I remember mother were walking somewhere, and she took me with her. It was a long, long walk in the fields with the sun, and she didn't give me any hat, and I ended up having heat stroke. She didn't think much. Then she was curing me with her blood. She thought that was the best cure, and I have a problem with my blood till this day. But I just want to tell you how mother didn't pay much attention. She was such a smart lady, but she took me to the pool and left me there when I first came to Israel at the pool. And of course, I had a great time. There was nothing like a sunscreen or anything, and I had a bathing suit or whatever, maybe just underwear. I was a little girl. By the night, I almost died. I had so much sun damage to my skin. Peeling, it was awful. You have never had a sunstroke, did you? I thought I would die that night. And my aunt was stupid too, because some adult took me away from that pool. I had a good time playing in the pool, out of the pool, in the pool, out of the pool, and Israel, very strong sun, making me sit in the house for a while before I had enough courage to come to the pool. Oh, talking about pool, that was still back in Bielawa. I was swimming, and not really swimming, but just playing in the pool, and they had this large, looking like a cross made out of a trunk of a tree that was smooth. In Poland we call it belka, I don't know how to say it in English right now. And the children were sitting on it and playing, jumping, playing. And I tried to sit on it. Somehow I went under, and I thought I will die. I thought I'm dead. I was drowning, except one little boy took me out and pulled me up. But I was thinking about poor mother. I said, "Mom, you will have no more baby." Yeah, I remember that very well. I know that I was in Israel already in 1948 because we're celebrating the independence of Israel. And remember, they were born in 46 in November, so we were there all 47, and then in early 48 we probably left. So we were a little bit more than a year. Yeah, in Israel I just knew there was freedom. Everybody was very happy and dancing around. If I've been in Tel Aviv, I might have seen more people dancing. You know, I see them on the movies, but we do dancing. We did sing and dance almost every Friday night. There was no kind of praying, as far as I can remember, or church in the kibbutz, because they were atheist, communist, kind of socialist. But there was a lot of fun on Friday night when they were singing and dancing. You don't know maybe yet, but you know I was in Israel again in 67, and I was again living in the kibbutz. And that time I remember better, you know, we had nice, like a place for socializing when there was a coffee and cookies and in the evening, but there was not much entertainment, like there was no television, not radio as far as I can remember, no books on tapes. But I didn't have a good radio till I came to this country, actually. Only a year. It was tragedy as far as my aunt could see, because it was difficult to get to Israel and difficult out of Israel. But like I told you, my mother was a hero lady, didn't take no for an answer, except she let me, you know, she didn't have any idea that sun can kill me, you know. She didn't like that hot climate. So we came back to Poland. I think what helped her probably, you know, it's so funny that I never really talked to my mother very deeply, but what helped her probably was that my sister's father was a Russian, some kind of high-ranking, probably officer, and probably that helped. And my mother never saw him again, as far as I know. Probably he had a wife in his country, or maybe he was Spanish. I don't know, you know, for socializing with you know, women on the road, but that was very common, you know. I think people were so happy after the war that they socialized quite. I remember him because I met him. They met on a train, you know, and then he came to our house in Bilava. They sent me for a couple of nights to Mrs. Weinberg, remember, that friends of ours? They were living there, and they had a honeymoon, you know, marriage and honeymoon, you know, private, but happy enough to have a sister. I'm very happy to have my sister despite of today's difficulties, you know. They were like my dolls. And you know, we all slept in one bed. I was always afraid that we're going to smother them, you know. There were no, probably, I don't know, probably we didn't have other beds. I don't remember. The bed was large, though. I think I went to school before they were born, because we came there probably earlier, and so at least probably a year before they were born. It still took 9 months, you know. Back to Warsaw, I went to Otwock when they had an orphanage for older children. I was like 10, and my sister went to another orphanage. So it took, I believe, at least a year or more before my mother got this apartment in Warsaw, very well localized in the middle of the city, on the ruin of ghetto. That was ghetto, you know, there. It was a nice block. Nowolipie 25, mieszkania 50 is their address. If you ever want to go there. It's in the middle of a community called Muranów. It's a very nice community now. I still didn't feel Jewish. My mother didn't feel Jewish. I didn't see synagogue till I was already in my medical school, or maybe, in the middle school. A friend of mine who was kind of Jewish took me there one time. We really didn't feel Jewish. We were assimilated. My father and... Actually, his father was a rabbi. But my mother she didn't speak Yiddish. when I came to this country, but the Jewish organization still was helping us and helped us to come to this country. The name of the organization is Joint. If you ever become rich, please help them. They're helping Jewish from Russia now. Anyhow, Joint helped us to come here, and I started to associate with the Jewish people in Boston, in Dorchester. There was like a Jewish organization. And I started to date a Jewish man, and his mother didn't believe I'm Jewish because I couldn't speak Yiddish. I didn't know anything about being Jewish anyhow, religious or Yiddish. She said, all people from Poland speak Yiddish. I said, yeah, not all. By the way, I like him, but I didn't like him because one of the things I didn't like him about, he was fat, really fat, and he liked to eat too much. But he was very nice. He was teaching English for foreign students. So he was nice. He was like my date, you know. Eventually he became involved with selling crystal and skull, and he started traveling, and that kind of, the whole relationship went down. And meantime, I started going to International Student House in in Cambridge, and I started meeting students from all over the world, and they were so much more fun to be with. Among others, some of the students helped me to go to India. They buy me the ticket. Let's say from the 1950s till 1963, December of 63, when I immigrated to United States. December, like a couple of days before Christmas, I believe, and New Year. I remember very well New Year. I think I remember Christmas in Boston. The reason we came to Boston was because my mother aunt, sister of her mother, was married to the professor in Harvard. His name was Philip Frank. He wrote a couple of books. He worked with Einstein. He wrote biography of Einstein, among others, philosophy of science. So he was still teaching, but he was just about to become, retired. And I remember we went to them on Christmas, and we got a gift. All three of us the same thing. That was a calendar, like a something you can use it for wiping dishes. Dish calendar for the year. Well, we needed everything, but Joint supply us with apartment, totally furnished. The only problem with that apartment was probably more than one problem. So my mother was already hunting for other place, and we're going to move to that place, and I think we invited mover to tell us how much it will cost, and we were totally robbed, probably by that mover, maybe, I don't know. I forgot the name of the street right now, but was very close to off Blue Hill Parkway, something, next to the zoo, in any case, park and a zoo. So it was very nice. You can work in a park and a zoo. But the night that we were already about leaving, the next morning, a man came and he said, I have a beautiful apartment for you and you're going to be very happy. So at night, he took us to that apartment. It was a garden apartment and everything was in bloom. Must have been in springtime. And I was so happy to be there. That was Mill Street. That's where, mother eventually died, It was a very small apartment. The only problem was that the bathroom was across there. We had to walk, but just across the lobby. But it was still a very good apartment. I really liked that apartment. Because the porch was very large porch with a beautiful column. And the sun was always there. You know how much I like to be outdoor. And it was beautiful. We had apples and pears. I tried to do some work in the garden, but I wasn't very good. You had to do it all the time. And of course I was working, so I didn't have time. Oh, my mother was waiting for a long time to have her number. You need to wait. I think that immediately when she came from Israel, she tried to go to America. She would have done it better if she stayed in Israel to go to America. I don't know. But anyhow, this is how she did it. Well, Poland was under communist, and she was still kind of had this mentality. She didn't like the political system, I think. She was very kind of, how to say, enterprise person. She was a survivor, and somehow she thought America is better for us. She always thought, like she thought in Israel we wouldn't get a good education. That was her main point. I don't know why. You can get a good education no matter where you are. It's up to you to get educated, you know. I did go to the movies a lot. I was a movie buff. Almost every day I went to the movie, I went to the theater, the tickets were very inexpensive, I went to opera. Remember, there was no television in the house, so I was always somewhere. It was good 6 days probably. And my favorite food was cornflakes. I just love gum. In the very beginning, we had some kind of packages from United States, and it looked like a, you know, the little white kind of round, it formed like that, white chocolate. Oh, how I love them. But very quickly they totally disappear, and I really suffer because I was addicted to the gum. So when I came to Israel, I told you my cousin Ari gave me those gums, and I opened it right away and I just chew them all the time. And then I came to this country, and in between jobs, and there were time between jobs, before I went to finally to India and graduate in Italy, I went to Harvard. I was listening to the lecture, because anybody can walk into the lecture hall, you know. And I was trying to get acquainted with the language and lecturing, and it was a great place to be in Harvard. Most of them had a horrible accent because the professor were a foreign professor, and even the American people had a difficulty to understand. You know, I went to India, 73, and from there I went to Africa. Oh yeah, I was trying to, in Africa I was already in the hospital, and I was visiting hospital, I was working with the doctors and learning everything. At one time, horrible thing happened. I left my pocketbook and somebody stole my money. And one time I was living in a house, they want us to protect the house, but the thief came at night and steal stuff, and we were sleeping. I was with another friend, so there was a lot of little trouble like that, but thank goodness not too horrible. They gave me free lodging basically and free food, so it didn't cost me anything. I was in Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, and always find some way. I was hitchhiking all over, meet some nice people. The problem was at the time the university kind of fell apart. So I was in first Dar es Salaam, that's capital of Tanzania, then in Kampala in Uganda, and then Nairobi in Kenya. That was university at one time, British university, but at that time all those universities fall apart, they become independent, and I couldn't really study there. There was a possibility, I thought I might finish there, but they told me it's really not a good idea. I was white, I didn't have a family. They said to me, come back as a professor. And then, you remember, then I went to Israel. When was I in Israel? Oh, wait a minute. I was in Israel in 1968. I was there in medical school. Remember? And I didn't want to stay longer than a year because I wanted to come to the United States to become a citizen. I could not, exactly, 5 years, and I could not interrupt that 5 years without trouble. I could not stay abroad longer than a year. And so I wasn't very happy anyhow, so I came home. So I was in Tel Aviv, Tel HaShomer, I was in Hadassah in Jerusalem. And then I had a scholarship, I had a room. I was a student, but anyhow I wasn't very happy. an opportunity came, and by ship, I went back to Europe. I traveled. I went to Naples, I think, and then I took train to where? To North Europe, and I took some ship to come back to the United States on a ship. I don't remember exactly. But I know there was a problem on a train, because when I bought those tickets, I didn't realize when you come off the boat, you have to exchange those vouchers for regular tickets. So I was showing them voucher, but they said, okay, they just, every time the conductors couldn't figure out what it was, but somehow I managed. Nobody threw me out of the train. So I came back to the house. I came back. And then the opportunity came in '73 after a couple of years. I worked in between. I tried to do this exam, but I don't think I was successful. So I went back to India, and from India, I was in a hospital around and visited all over, but I didn't even think I could study there. And from India, I went to Africa. We're talking 70s now. And from Africa, I ended up in Rome. And that's where I finished my medical school. Crazy life. University of Rome. And I graduate the best. It say 110 con 110 con lode. That's my that I just knew Italian because I knew I never complained about it. All the other Americans were like an American colony. They were together, they spoke English. Most of them had wives, you know. By the way, talking about wives, there was one stupid thing. How can you live without a husband, you know? Like that would be so important. It was not important, you know. It would be nice, but was not so important. But actually the medical school, mostly the American, they were pretty old too. They were like my age because it was very difficult to be accepted and finish in the United States. So they were pretty old. I mean, my age. But I never made too much friendship with American. I usually had Italian friends. I lived with Italian girlfriend, you know. And I came and I started working I did my exam very well, very quickly. So I started working in Fall River. After I came back, I met him during Esperanto convention in Toronto. Brent, Kaimo Brent. I don't know how to say it in English. That's how he called himself. By the way, he was married, you know, and had a daughter, 12 years old. I was corresponding with his wife for years afterwards. She went to Scotland. She was a traveling nurse. I met her during some Esperanto convention. We were very good friends. Everything. Well, he didn't love her anymore, and I thought we were going to get married. I had a job already in Toronto. He would visit us in Dorchester. Got very sick that night, had a bad ear infection, and he cried all night long. It wasn't a very pleasant visit. I didn't know what to do. He was just very, very unhappy and cranky. Ralph Murphy, he came to the house. It was an open Esperanto house, and he stayed. He knew about me before. I didn't know anything about him, but he knew about him already in Washington during the Esperanto convention, and we were very happy together. Well, he came home. He was sitting at the table eating breakfast. I was swimming, and he collapsed. And then we called 911. I know he has a weak heart. He had a couple of heart attacks before. I was always afraid that he might die when he was driving with you in the car. I was always afraid for some accident. So that he died in the house by the table was in a way very fortunate, because imagine the trouble. I mean, he can kill you and some other people. And it happened, you know. Every day in Florida, somebody had an accident, not because they are not paying attention to the road or anything like that, but because they're having heart attack and they're collapsing. That happened every day, every single day on the road. Oh, I always like to be in a warm climate. Remember I told you I could not be a dentist because I had this problem with my circulation of blood in my hand, remember? So I needed warm climate. I could not get cold. Till these days, I don't want to be cold. Oh, my mother was sick for many years before that with her heart and high blood pressure, and she got stroke. And she went to the hospital, and from one hospital she went to another, like rehabilitation hospital. She didn't really want to live as a handicapped person. Somehow along the way, I think she stopped eating, and they decided not to force-feed her, because she was paralyzed. And she was in a wheelchair. I think one of her sides was paralyzed. And basically she stopped eating. And she was in a way glad because she finally lost all that extra weight that she had all her life. Well, not all her life. In her older age, she had this hard time. She was trying to be slimmer. So she was pretty slim when she died. I have you in Boston Hospital. Children's Hospital. Oh no, well, they were together, children, and I was a resident there. Actually, no, I was resident in Kearney. Was it more or less painful? I can't really say it. I remember I was trying not to miss my programs. In my room there was a television, so I was watching my Laverne and Shirley till the last minute. So I had all that comedies. Yeah, you came okay. You were looking pretty good. Well, Irka married a very rich young man. Chot was his name. Irka is my sister, of course, and he was actually younger than she was, but not much younger. And he had this property in Isla Morada. And during the winter, I really didn't feel good in Boston, so I started coming to Florida, spending long winters there. I was already on my own, means I had my own practice, so I didn't depend on anybody. I could just close the door and say, well, I'm on vacation. A lot of my other patients were also having little houses in Florida, so they were all flocking to Florida. Well, they need a doctor in walk-in clinic, and I contact them from the New England Journal of Medicine. They were advertised. They came over. This guy came over to Isla Morada with a plane, and there was a little airport there in Marathon, so I flew to Port Charlotte, and he showed me around. And I came and I started working. And I called Ralph, and he came. He came and he started helping me, and he brought the furniture. I mean, the minimum that we needed, because the first house that I bought was fully furnished. I originally just rented it, and then a couple of months later I decided to buy it. That was a mistake, by the way. I should have bought a house next door that I was thinking about on the other street, because it was on a canal. Any house in Florida that is on the water, the value appreciates really quickly. This little house didn't appreciate so much. But as you know, eventually Joe moved in with his friend, and he sold it. Well, I loved the beaches right away. The moment I saw the beach, I was in love with it. And after that died, I felt maybe it's time for me to get out of there. It was sad to be, there. We had a pool that was a lot of work. So anyhow, one day I was driving from Venice, and I just took the turn to Englewood, and I stopped at the first real estate office that I saw for a free map. But the lady kind of insisted that she really want to go with me and show me something. And I said, I really am not too sure, I really don't know. Oh, well, that's my job to show people around who are not too sure. And I follow her, and she showed me that little house that I eventually bought it. There were a bunch of other houses next to it for sale. This was the least expensive house, and it stunk because the water went into the house and wet the carpet, and they never changed the carpet. So when you walked to that house, it was a horrible smell. And eventually I was able to lower the price quite a lot and get a mortgage from the owner. So it was very inexpensive for me to move in. I didn't even have to sell the house in Port Charlotte at the time. I'm a gypsy lady. Oh, I always like to be a gypsy. That they have this opinion about Jews that they are always gypsy people traveling around. Well, I'm one of those.
Эх, полоним, полна моя коровочка есть, внесите сы парча. Пожалей, душа моя, зазановушка, молодецкого плеча. Ча-ча-ча. Ох, цены сам платила я немалые,